Welcome to Inspiring Perspectives, a podcast by thinkPARALLAX featuring fresh takes and bold ideas for the real-world sustainability challenges and solutions at some of the world's most respected brands and companies. I'm your host, Derek Sabori, and this is what sustainability sounds like today. All right, well, hey everybody. I'm here today with Christina Berger, Senior Director, Corporate Communications, ESG and Policy at ThredUp. Christina, welcome to Inspiring Perspectives. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited. This is going to be great. I love what you all are doing there at ThredUp. I mean, just what a massive operation, and what's turned into what's gone from thrifting and selling secondhand is really, I mean, you're a technology company, it seems like. So maybe if you can tell us, for those that might not have made the switch to thrift, tell us about ThredUp. What are you guys working on over there?
Sure. ThredUp is an online resale platform, and we make it really easy to buy and sell secondhand apparel, shoes, and accessories. So thrifting, of course, isn't new. People have been doing this for decades, swapping clothes, flea markets, estate sales. But what we've done is we've really modernized the thrift store by bringing it fully online. So technology has really changed the game here, as you said, and ThredUp is really at the forefront of that. On one side of the marketplace, you have sellers. So, we make it really convenient to get rid of the clothes that you're no longer wearing in a sustainable way. You fill a bag with items from any brand in your closet, you send it to us, we do the work to make those items available for resale. And then on the other side of the marketplace, you have the shoppers. And you can shop more than 55,000 brands, Gap to Gucci, value, premium, luxury brands all in one place. And that's at up to 90% off estimated retail price. So it's great brands at great prices in a sustainable way.
Yeah, so better on your wallet, better on the planet, kind of better all around, maybe a fun shopping experience. I mean, the whole thing is just a different mindset, right? It's a different approach. I know my young daughter, she's 17. I mean, she only buys secondhand. That's all she's looking for. Do you see a shift in sort of a generational shift? How's business been for you all?
Yeah, what we really see is that thrifting kind of transcends generations. So there's definitely, a younger cohort that's really starting to thrift more and more, especially as they kind of age into the workforce and, have more disposable income. But we publish an annual resale report that kind of, looks at the trends and breaks it down by generation. And it's always really strong across the board. And that goes from, everyone from Gen Z all the way up to the silent generation. And there's different nuances within that, but it's definitely something that's really popular, kind of regardless of age.
Yeah. I watched the video that you have on the website, and I mean, what an operation. It's been really interesting to look at your timeline, see how things have grown and evolved. And speaking of evolving, I'm really interested about your role as we lead up into our conversation here. You made your way into this space through, kind of via communications and PR roles. What have been the benefits to that in helping you in this role that you're in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a great question. And I think I'm really fortunate to have, had the opportunity to do impact and policy work at a few different companies, including my former employer, Upwork. And it's really happened organically, I would say, both there and here at ThredUp. It's actually somewhat common. Companies like Meta have a unified communications and public policy team. And I think the reason for that is that communications teams are responsible for driving a set of key business narratives, that you want to push as a company, and really tailoring those to your various stakeholders. And policymakers are one of those audiences. So the relationship between communications and public policy is really important. Depending on a company's structure, they might have a dedicated public affairs team that partners with comms, or for the teams that are a bit smaller and leaner like ThredUp, you oftentimes see the same person leading both. And I think ultimately you end up with a more cohesive and consistent messaging that really all ladders back to the same narratives.
So, and that's interesting, and I think that's a good point. Our conversation today is on this idea that, when you're making sustainability claims, you've got to be careful. When do you talk about it? There's a big pushback on, or big concerns about greenwashing. There's also green hushing. verifying your claims, backing them up, and kind of, I guess, just treading lightly when you're putting your message out there. What's your take on sustainability communications and what you can say, what you shouldn't say? How does policy tie in? I don't know. Let's dive into that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's do it. But I think what I would say kind of initially is, companies are increasingly under pressure to prove that they're quote unquote good. And I'll explain what I mean by that. This used to be called corporate social responsibility, or CSR. And in the last handful of years, it became more commonly referred to as ESG, which includes not only being a good steward to your people and communities, which is that social component, but also to the environment. And then, also that you're operating with ethics and integrity. And that's where kind of the governance piece comes in. And I think, it's important because companies have to be held accountable for their impact and their business practices. They have real effects on our society and on our planet. I believe that all good business is not just posting strong growth metrics, but also about doing good. And so we talk a lot about balancing purpose and profit at ThredUp, because profit without purpose is, somewhat hollow and maybe reckless. And purpose without profit makes it really challenging to grow and have an impact because you're financially strapped. So I think for a business like ThredUp, we kind of view purpose and profits to be, inextricably linked. And for an example, just kind of like a simple one, the more secondhand items we sell, the better it is for our bottom line and for the planet. Conversely, the less we sell, the less money we make, the less we're preventing, carbon emissions, saving water and saving energy. So it's really important to us at ThredUp, and as long as I've been at the company, it's something that really drives our strategy and kind of everything that we do.
Christina, how does that message kind of filter throughout the company? How do you get that across to all your employees, all the team? What's the mode for really making sure that everybody understands that profit and purpose are tied together at the company?
Yeah, I mean, at ThredUp, it's really kind of a tops down thing. Our CEO is really passionate about it. He talks about it frequently. It's a really big part of most conversations that we're having. And we've also kind of, backed that up with things like joining the long-term stock exchange. Which, is a new kind of exchange that really kind of prioritizes, doing good and operating your business in an ethical way versus, the short-term quarterly earnings cycle that, you have to adhere to if you're listed on an exchange like NASDAQ, which we also are. And so we talk about it and we try to do things that really showcase that, we have a commitment and an investment behind it. And really, I would give credit to our CEO because I do think, it's really started from the top and there's been kind of a trickle down effect.
So I want to go back on that long-term stock exchange. I don't know much about it. And I remember reading that on the website. What was that decision like? How long have you been over there? And does that have any, ramifications according to the other stock exchanges? Is it the same ticker, or is it just kind of a different package of stocks? Tell me more about it.
Yeah. So it's a secondary exchange, so you have to be dual listed. So it's not meant to be competitive with, the other major stock exchanges like NYSE and NASDAQ. And I think, the reason that we decided to dual list, which was, I think over a year ago now, probably actually like a year and a half now, we were really kind of focused on impact in a way that we didn't feel was being reflected or getting credit for in the public markets that we were in. And so we really kind of were bought into this concept, which was really one from Eric Ries, who is, well known in the technology world, where he said, I think that companies also should be graded on, the good that they're doing. And there's more to business than just, quarterly financial metrics. And so that really resonated, I think, with what we were already doing and already talking about. And so it was really attractive for us. And, we're really proud to be one of the companies that's listed on the LTSE.
Christina, as you build all this out, obviously you just said that it comes from the top. There's inspiration from the top. This is driven from the top. I would imagine there's some sort of framework or structure that you're using Do you have values or principles in place, goals and targets? What are sort of the foundational elements to keep this thing moving along?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think most companies and people that run them want to do the right thing when it comes to sustainability or ESG more broadly. And I think there's kind of two principles that have really guided and anchored us at ThredUp. And the first is authenticity. If you look at our impact report, you'll see that the key focus areas really make a lot of sense for us. I'll give you a couple of examples on the sustainability side. One is product circularity and end of life. So this is directly related to what our business does. We extend the life cycle of clothes, and then the end of life piece refers to what we do with the clothes we can't resell. And then another one is sustainable packaging. We're an e-commerce business. We operate exclusively online. So we're sending millions of packages every year. And at that volume, the materials we use really matter. And if you order from ThredUp, you'll see that our experience really kind of reflects, the commitment to sustainability. Packaging includes sustainable, reusable, and recyclable materials. We send 100% of the cleanout bags that we receive to a partner called the AZEC company that actually repurposes it for a decking product. So I think the authenticity piece is one. And then the second is transparency. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with accountability. So, recently in California, there was something signed by the governor in, I think it was December, that requires companies to basically verify the claims that are being made about, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. So I think regulation will play a role here, and at ThredUp, what I shared with you about the life cycle assessments, is something that is really important to us in terms of really being able to, verify the claims that we're making across our experience. So I think, authenticity and transparency play a really big role and are something that, have really helped us here at ThredUp.
It's really interesting. And I want to get into the idea of how you're messaging this to your customers. So we've mentioned a few things. You've talked about the fact that when you sell more products, it's better for the planet because they're secondhand, profit and purpose being tied together. When you're talking to, let's dive into the heart of that, making, the claims conversation and treading lightly. How are you justifying it? How do you go about, telling your customer that, hey, when you buy, this is a lower footprint, you're reducing emissions, you're reducing waste. How are you all kind of quantifying that, measuring that? I know you've got a calculator on your website that customers can be involved with. So talk to me about how you are feeling confident in what you're sharing and expressing to your stakeholders.
Just taking a step back, I think kind of what's been happening is that this has really become kind of a loaded topic. There's sort of two ends of the spectrum, which you'd alluded to earlier. On one end, you have, greenwashing, which is basically making it seem like your company is more environmentally friendly than it is. And on the other end, you have green hushing, which is basically staying quiet out of fear, that you're going to get criticized or called out. And I think, I hope that we can agree that neither of those is really a great place to live. And so the big question kind of becomes, what's the happy medium? How can companies talk about sustainability, make claims, and make progress without, getting themselves in hot water? And, that could be adhering to mandatory disclosures that are put forth by the SEC or, voluntary disclosures that you want to make and that you choose to make kind of on your own volition. And so that's kind of the backdrop for the topic that we're talking about today. And I think, we need to get this right, really, so that companies are compelled to prioritize sustainability and encouraged to talk about it without that fear of retribution while still holding themselves accountable. And that's really kind of what we've tried to do at ThredUp. We're a mission-driven company with sustainability at our core. And we really believe that we have a responsibility to have credibility and trust and transparency behind the claims that we're making, because it's really the basis for a lot of the things that we do. And it really shows up in a lot of different places, across our experience. And so it's important to us that, we're doing that in the right way and that we can do it and that we're not afraid to do it.
Who would you say on all of that is who's holding you accountable the most? Is it those, the FTC has guidelines, what they were issued in 2012. We're waiting for a new set of marketing guidelines for what we can say and what we cannot say. That'll be interesting when those come about. Is the customer, though, holding you accountable, would you say, or investors and shareholders, or is it those policies that are out there? What guidelines are, really, who's holding you accountable to what you're saying and how you're saying it?
I think everybody is a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, it can come from any angle, and rightfully so. The press has dug into it more. Customers also want to know, where are these claims coming from? Can I trust these? Academics and researchers who, are doing their own due diligence on it. It really comes from all of our different stakeholders, and we're also holding ourselves accountable for it. The crux of our business is based on the fact that, buying secondhand is a more sustainable option than buying new. And if we can't say that with ultimate confidence, then, we have a problem there. And so it's really important to us that we're able to do that. And so, we've voluntarily chosen to pursue things like life cycle assessments, that really can back that up. And it's not just us saying it. It's, we're actually scientifically measuring, for example, that the environmental impact of buying secondhand over new is significant.
Tell me about the LCAs that you're doing. What are you doing them on just kind of the business model overall, on particular product groups, or give me some insight there?
Yeah, so we have worked with a company called Green Story Inc. and partnered with them on two different life cycle assessments. I think the first one was in 2018 or 19, and then we redid it actually in 2022 because the methodology had evolved so significantly, and it's important to us that we're always kind of using the latest. And so really the key question that we set out to answer was, what is the environmental impact of buying secondhand clothing on ThredUp instead of buying it new? And then, we did life cycle impacts, I think across 15 categories of garments. So really the primary ones that are on our site: dresses, sweaters, coats, jackets, things like that. And so we did kind of do it. We tried to do it, broken down a little bit more versus just kind of a generic statement about a piece of clothing, because we know that it's very different for jeans, than it is for a cotton t-shirt.
Did you find, what did you find specifically, I guess, where there, and I guess, what did you do with that data? Did that give you more confidence in how you were speaking to it? Did you use that? Were you able to use that data on your website? How was that data used? How did it power your story?
Yeah, it's actually kind of something that we rely on really, really heavily throughout our entire experience. So we help customers make informed purchasing decisions. We present it on our product listing pages, for example. So if you're looking at an item on our site, it will tell you, by purchasing this items, you will prevent however many pounds of carbon emissions, you will save, whatever gallons of water and, a certain amount of energy. And so one is we've really tried to use it in our customer marketing. We use it in consumer marketing campaigns. We use it, in our social channels. We use it when we're talking to policymakers. Our resale as a service clients use it to calculate the impact of their resale programs. So it's an important piece of work that we've done, and that I'm sure we will continue to evolve, just to make sure that, we're really accurately describing the impact that we're making.
Is that what you rely on most for verifying your claims? Are those LCA assessments that you talked about and that you're doing?
Only for the claims that we make around secondhand being more sustainable. There are other things that we do, like a greenhouse gas inventory assessment, where, we disclose our scope 1 through 3 emissions, and, we share, what the highest emission areas are, so that we can kind of hold ourselves accountable for improving upon those. So, there are a lot of different things. The LCA is one, probably the one that's most public, just because it does show up in so many places. But there are many different claims we make, and, therefore, different ways that we need to verify those.
What would you say, I guess, kind of looking at the whole program, the work that you're doing? I know it's sort of been an evolution, What has been, I think, whether it's the LCA approach, or I guess, different, if it's the distribution model, if it's the different marketing messages, but what's been the most effective in really driving your business forward and helping kind of create this shift in the eye of the consumer? Is the consumer interested in the environmental savings, the impact that they have, or are they interested because it's just less expensive or it's easier? What do you think is driving people to come to ThredUp?
I think it's the whole package. Like, we kind of call it the value trifecta. Great brands, great prices, in a sustainable way. And I think each of those pieces matters in a different capacity. In a time like right now where, people are still a bit strapped and, value is playing a really big role, that might be a bigger reason that they come to us. But we also know that a lot of customers want to do the right thing. They want to make better shopping choices. And so they can have both, with secondhand. And so we really kind of try to lean into all of those different things to show why secondhand is a better option and really try to educate them on the impact of their choices. You'd mentioned the calculator earlier, and I think that was a really great tool in being able to raise awareness. A lot of people probably don't know that it's so much better to wash your clothes in cold and hang them dry. A lot of people, don't necessarily know how bad it is. I didn't until I started working at ThredUp. And then once you kind of start to understand that, and you start to see that you can buy amazing things on a site like ThredUp, it's hard to go back.
The engagement part then for getting the consumer, bringing them along for the ride, right? Educating them, showing them, kind of teaching them. Is that something that there's dedicated effort there? Is that always evolving? Is it, what else what else can you share with them? Is there a blog that they've got? How best to engage the consumer in your journey?
Yeah, I think there are a number of different ways that we do that. In the past, we've done specific, consumer education campaigns where, we'll kind of take advantage of a moment that makes a lot of sense to educate. So an example would be around around a festival like, Coachella or something like that, where single-use fashion tends to be, in high demand. Like, that's a really great time for us to help people understand that they can make a better choice, that they can actually outfit themselves, for that festival with secondhand clothing that they can then wear again, and it doesn't have to be a wasteful experience. So there are specific campaigns that we've done like that in the past. We also, we really try to leverage the in-product experience to do that. So like I said, when you're, browsing on the site and you land on a specific product, we'll actually tell you, here's the impact that you can make by purchasing this item instead of buying it new. And so I think there's a lot of different touch points. And the reason that we pursue so many different channels is because we really want to repeat that message for the customer. We want to make sure that they're hearing it in many different places so that when it does come time for them to shop for clothing, in the back of their head, they're like, oh, maybe I'll look at ThredUp, and that's why our tagline is think secondhand first. We're really, really trying to get as many people as possible to think secondhand first when it comes to buying apparel.
Why is that? I think we've touched on it lightly. We know it's kind of better, but how do you convince people if people maybe aren't already there? We know that, making products, what's the story? What's the pitch why secondhand is better though, specifically to the customer? What are the impacts? I know you've even got I saw on the blog post, calling out a particular very well-known brand for burning inventory. There's excess inventory. What's the state of the union? Why is this business model so important?
Yeah, I think, if you take a look at the broader retail industry, one of the most alarming statistics is that we produce 100 billion garments every year for a population of about 9 billion people. That's pretty staggering. So when you think about it in those terms, there isn't enough clothing. Enough clothing exists, and we really need to kind of produce less and reuse more. And there's amazing clothes out there. A lot of the things on our site are new with tags, or they've only been worn once. They're in excellent condition. And so if you can get the amazing things that you want at, a lower price, and you can feel good about doing it, and not feel guilty about the impact on the planet, it's kind of hard to say no. And so we kind of get people that buy into thrift. And I think once they realize, what they can achieve by buying secondhand, again, it's really hard to go back. Kind of one of the examples that we like to reference is, if you can get a new J. Crew dress on ThredUp for $24, why would you go to a J. Crew store and buy it new for $150?
What about, sometimes you'll often hear that, hey, it's just kind of moving the problem from one area to another. What about all the products you don't sell, right? There's, as you pointed out, there's so much inventory out there. We just keep making more. So the machine just kind of keeps pumping out more and more product. ThredUp is one distribution outlet for that, and getting those products sort of off the market into hands, extending the life of them. What about the products that don't get sold? Then I would imagine you still also need another place to send them, right?
Yes. And this is one of the questions that we get asked the most. And, product circularity and end of life is one of our primary focuses. And I think ultimately we want to extend the life cycle of clothing, as long as we possibly can. And that means putting things back in an American closet where we can, and then managing the items that we can't resell. And so we really want to help, close the loop by finding ways that we can improve what we call our aftermarket business. So about half of the items that we receive, we list on our marketplace, and then the other half go through what we call our aftermarket. And so within that, there are actually a couple different programs. So we do have a rescues program where customers can purchase heavily discounted bundles of secondhand items. And so this is kind of our way of saving the items that don't qualify for listing on our marketplace, because we do have a pretty rigorous quality standard, but we still feel like they have a lot of life left in them. And so we sell, millions of items through this rescues channel, and really divert quite a bit of clothing from, aftermarket channels. And then for the aftermarket, the items that we can't resell on our site or that aren't fit for the rescues program, we work with a vetted network of partners, and really try to do what we can to keep those items out of landfill. So about 2/3 of that we sell to domestic thrift stores, and then the rest, we sell to graders and sorters or international brokers. But about 80% of that is staying in the U.S., and we're recirculating that domestically. So, there's a lot happening there. We've experimented with different ways to innovate there too. We've done downcycling, we've done upcycling, we've done things like that, because it is something that we get asked a lot about, and it's something that we want to feel good about, because we don't want to contribute to, mountains of clothing in landfills or in third world countries where they don't have the infrastructure to process it.
What are the biggest challenges with the whole system, I guess, with the business model, with the apparel industry in general, or just delivering a good product to your customers or a good service? What are the biggest challenges that you face in your role?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest challenges for the business has been just the complexity of what we've built. ThredUp is 15 years old this year, and we've really spent the last decade and a half kind of, building a supply chain from the ground up. We've had to tackle reverse logistics so that we can get the inventory back. We source all of our inventory from American closets. And then, the processing of those items that happens in our distribution centers is also really complex. And so that, I think, has been, one of the biggest challenges. Now we've kind of developed that operating platform and that, distributed processing infrastructure. And so I think, we feel really good about kind of the model that we have, and the role that we play in the circular economy. But that definitely was, a really big challenge, and probably the biggest one to date that the company's had.
Yeah. And so looking for more and more, I know you expanded out into the retail model as well to become a service for brands or retailers, or I guess brands that have their own product that they want to get over to you to put on the secondhand market as well. Is that right? Tell us how that works.
Yes. So that is what we call our resale as a service, or RaaS business. And essentially the way that this offering was born is, traditional retail is really not set up for reverse logistics or, to process single SKUs. That's not how the traditional model operates, and it's something that's really complex. So we thought, what if we could do this on behalf of brands and retailers? This would allow them to participate in the resale economy, and, we could amplify kind of the advantage of, the operating platform that we've built. And so about 6 years ago, we started working with brands and retailers. Our first client ever was Reformation, and they're still a client today. And we work with them in a few different ways. One of those ways, and the most popular probably, is take back programs. So we have our signature clean out kit, and we essentially work with brands and retailers to be able to distribute those to their customers so that they can, have resale programs that are actually managed by ThredUp on the back end. And in many cases, they also have digital resale shops. And so not only are they collecting items from their customers, but they're actually reselling secondhand products from their brand to their customers. So it's been really exciting to see the growth. We work with about 50 brands and retailers today, including, J. Crew, Tommy Hilfiger, H&M, Kate Spade, you name it. So it's been really interesting to watch the adoption among retailers.
Christina, do you think brands are coming to ThredUp because they need to be able to tell their stakeholders that, hey, we're responsible in this way, or because it's a great business model, or because of, I don't know, maybe pending circularity, EPR legislation that might be coming down the pipes? Which of those things do you think resonates with them, or is it a little bit of everything?
It's a little bit of everything. Over the years, we've talked to hundreds of brands and retailers, and, they come to us for different reasons. We also, in the annual resale report that I previously mentioned, we have survey data around this, where we're really asking brands and retailers, why did you want to get into resale? What are the benefits that you've seen since you've launched the program? And then for the ones that aren't doing it, what are the barriers? And I would say, in this year's report, the number one reason that brands said they got into resale was to advance their sustainability goals. But, they also are looking to generate revenue. They want to acquire customers. And so there are kind of, many different reasons that they come, and then many different reasons that they stay.
Yeah, and do most of them stay? The attrition is pretty low. They stick around, and once they're in, you've got them.
Yeah, nobody has 100% retention, but yeah. We wish we do. But yeah, I think a lot of the brands, the benefits that they're seeing definitely make the investment worth it, because as the data shows, customers are shopping secondhand. They want to shop secondhand. And if you aren't offering them a way to do that, they'll engage with your product on the resale market elsewhere. So I think brands are starting to realize that they're leaving something on the table by not engaging with resale. Smart strategy would say don't do that. So I think a lot of the brands, are making the investment and really trying to meet that consumer demand.
I guess we'll kind of start to wrap things up here, because I want to get some advice from you in terms of, ThredUp has built a business in a space that didn't necessarily exist, and you've scaled it up and you've created something new. So that's exciting, but there are challenges with it. So what would be some takeaways that you have for companies that might be thinking of entering into a more sustainable, disruptive business, and you've got to kind of start from scratch? You've got to build it as you go, build it as the airplane is flying. How would you advise in terms of leading, communicating, building, raising capital, whatever it might be, playing by the rules, being disruptive? Give me some good advice that you think you might have for people that want to get in this space.
Yeah, I think like anything, talking to people and networking and learning from others is always really important. And one thing that I've noticed in particular for, sustainability and circularity as I've become more ingrained in that world is people are really passionate about it. They want to help others. They want to collaborate. They want to build partnerships. So I would say really take advantage of that and, put yourself out there, learn how other companies have done it and are doing it, because everybody is still learning. This is, relatively speaking, it's still all pretty new. And I think we're all sort of navigating it together. And so I think the biggest piece of advice that I would have is really to, connect with others and learn and kind of share what you've learned and, kind of crawl, walk, run. It's something that's definitely learned. And to the point of the overall topic of, making claims that you feel good about, it's not really something that you want to rush. And so I think kind of making sure that you're really kind of building that, in the right way and being thoughtful about it is really important.
Yeah, that's great. Lastly, what you're dealing, I think, in the realm of excess inventory, extending the useful life of products, keeping products in play, getting the most out of resources and materials, which I think is such a good mode of attack here for sustainability, right? Even when you're talking to brands, it's one of the first things they can do is just make your products last longer and get your customers to wear them longer and take better care of them. Are there other topics, though, that are top of mind for you that you've really got your eye on, or you're really intrigued by, or keeping an eye on, whether it's any other sustainability issue, environmental, social, governance? What kind of keeps you up at night or gets you kind of going, hey, that's something we really need to keep an eye on, whether it's personally or for the business, or advice that you have for others?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom headlines about climate change and the future of the planet, and it's easy to get attached to those, especially since I'm a realist. But, I think that we do have the opportunity to kind of change the trajectory. And one of the things that we didn't really touch on a ton is kind of the work that's happening, in the policy space. And so I think, there's a lot that can be done there. It's kind of untapped. And, we like to say that sustainable fashion, is the next frontier in policy. And so we're actually starting to see some really exciting traction there that makes me a little bit more optimistic for the future. So I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on. We're part of a policy group called the American Circular Textiles Coalition that's doing some really exciting work. And I think it's definitely something to pay attention to.
What are you excited about in terms of policy? What do you think is coming down the pipes? What do people need to know about?
So, this group has been up and running for about 2 years now. It includes, I think, more than 20 members now, and we're proud to be a founding member of the group. And the group exists to, help advance circular textile policy. And we've really kind of seen that over the couple of years since we were initially founded, the conversation has changed a bit, where policymakers seem a lot more engaged and a lot more interested and receptive to talking about this. In some cases, they're actually coming to us and saying, we want to learn more about this and we want to know what we can do to help. And that's huge. And then you're starting to see this actually kind of come to fruition. I think the most recent example is in March, 2 U.S. senators introduced a trade bill called the Americas Act. And one of the things that we were able to do with our policy group is push for the inclusion of $14 billion worth of incentives for circularity. And this was really exciting because, this is the first time that federal legislation has really considered circular fashion. And so, that didn't happen 2 years ago. It's never happened. And so we're kind of at this pivotal moment where I think, the government is recognizing that they have a role to play. And so I think, you're going to start to see a lot more movement and traction on that side.
What were some of the things that were included in there? Are they putting responsibility onto the makers or the sellers, the consumer? How would that work? What are some of the details in there?
Yeah, so this was really focused on incentives versus on regulation. And so, there's a 15% tax credit in there for, businesses that are involved in collection, sorting, reuse, recycling. And then there's also, the $14 billion worth of incentives. Some of it would go to R&D. Some of it would go into building the infrastructure that, maybe we don't have in a lot of the country. Companies like ThredUp do exist, but I think we all recognize that we do need more. And so I think it's exciting, and, the bill still needs to get passed, but we're really hopeful, and it's nice to see that there's a bill that has bipartisan support, which doesn't happen all the time, and so I think there's a lot of promise there.
What do you think the chances of it passing are? Give me a crystal ball approach.
I was going to say, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't really know, and I think in an election year it might be a little bit tougher, to get something to move. But last month, a couple members of the ACT group went to Washington, D.C. and met with different congressional offices. We got to hear, both of the senators sponsoring the bill speak, and they're really passionate about it. They're trying to garner more support. We were trying to garner more support. So I think we're moving in the right direction, regardless of what happens with the bill. And again, this was sort of, a first-time historic moment that I think, is a really good signal for the future.
Yeah, I love that, the idea of it moving in the right direction. I want to, if I can, one more question on this. I'm interested, how important is the role of policy in moving forward circularity, sustainability? Obviously, you guys are, founding members of this organization, so I know it's important, but is that what's going to push us forward? Or is it going to be because other companies see successful business models and say, wow, we should do something like ThredUp? Is it pressure from customers? How important is policy in all of this?
I think it's pretty important. And if you kind of look at, history, the government has really sort of stepped in to help curb, other pollutive industries and, change behavior. So one of the examples is cigarettes, right? Like that's probably the most well-known example where they really had to step in to really make that change, and look how far we've come over the last several decades. Another one that's more recent is electric vehicles. People are getting tax credits for going electric, and that was something that I think really drove a lot of adoption. We have an electric vehicle. That wasn't true 5 years ago. And so I think this could be another area where it could really kind of accelerate the transition to a more sustainable future.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, Christina? Where do you want to send people? Where do people go to keep up with the latest happenings at ThredUp? Head over to the website, I would imagine. Anything else you want to leave us with or direct people to?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, if you want to see our latest news, we have a newsroom, newsroom.thredup.com. On the impact side specifically, you can visit us at ir.thredup.com. And then most importantly, if you haven't experienced shopping in our marketplace, you're missing out, and you can visit us at thredup.com.
Yeah, well, and that's the mission of the company, right, is to inspire the world to think secondhand first. I love also, it seems like on one of your releases that when you opened up a new office, everything was, all the design elements, I guess, were repurposed, vintage or secondhand.
Yes.
So it can be done, right? It can be done, and we can still live a fruitful, thriving life with secondhand.
That's right.
Love it. Well, Christina, thank you. Thanks for all the work you all are doing over there. It's really exciting, and keep us posted on whatever else is happening. But thanks for sharing your insights today.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
You bet. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Hey, thanks for checking out our show today. This show was produced by the team at thinkPARALLAX, a sustainability and communications agency with 2 decades of experience working with companies at every stage of the sustainability journey. We are experts at assessing where a company is today, defining a North Star, and developing a roadmap to get there. If your team needs sustainability guidance or training, or you have a recommendation for a guest or a topic on the show, visit us at thinkparallax.com. We'd love to hear from you.